Hello there, welcome to another episode of World of Tanks with Ungainly Titan. This game, I've debated with myself quite a bit whether I'd show this game or how I'd actually show this game, because this is, despite pretty good matchmaking, despite being on Steppes, which is a map that I really like and generally do reasonably well in, this is one of the worst games of World of Tanks that I've ever witnessed in 25,000 games plus. And it is a game where my decisions generated hate mail from one of my teammates. Now, and I just had a bit of an argument with him, which is one of the reasons that I kind of want to show it, because it is obvious, very shortly it will be quite obvious. Everybody seems to be doing the normal thing right now, but it will be very obvious in a moment that this team isn't deploying as such. There's 2 tanks going east the moment, there's 1 tank going west, and everybody else is kind of milling around in a mob in front of the escarpment, in front of the cap circle, or around the cap circle itself. I am driving in this direction because I do not want to be down in the broken ground there on the western side of the map, isolated and on my own against a horde of enemy tanks coming against me. The enemy team are scouting reasonably aggressively, and they probably have lit up quite a lot of our tanks. None of our light tanks are doing it, and nobody's looking anywhere on the western side of the map. So I've come up to the railroad because I've basically accepted that I cannot see any way that this game can be won, and I'm just going to maximise my opportunity for doing damage. I did consider crossing over to help the tanks on the eastern side of the map, but I reckoned I wouldn't get there in time to make any significant difference. If I had gone at the start, it might have been a better move, and I might have been able to do something useful for the team, because I might have been able to help out there while there was still tanks alive in that area, and maybe get a bit of momentum, a bit of movement on that side of the map. But I reckon by the time I'd be over there, the battle would have been done, and the momentum would have been lost, and I wouldn't be in a position then to restart it. The Stuart Emil, which you saw right at the very start as I was leaving the cap circle, heading towards the ridge line there in front of the cap circle, has come over to join me. I suspect he's come to a similar conclusion. Now, I don't think he's made a good choice in coming over here with a Stuart Emil, because the gun handling on that isn't great, and the firing arcs of the German TDs aren't all that mighty. I haven't played a Stuart Emil myself yet, but just my own experience in the lower tier German TDs. He might have been better going over to A6 where that heavy tank is and poking the ridgeline there, where he had a better chance of not being spotted, at least for a while, and he might get some good initial damage, which might certainly have made the tanks on that side more cautious. I'm not really spoiling anything by saying we didn't actually win this game pretty much as I expected, and my decisions to come up here did provoke some negative reaction by at least one of my fellow players, who sent me some messages to the effect that I didn't know how to play and I put my tank in a bad place. And he does have a point, but it's not necessarily a bad place. It's more of a selfish place. The guys that put their tanks at the back of the map generally not going to help their team winning. But you'll often notice that they'll come statistically quite well, especially in losing games. They'll generally have very good damage scores. They very often have very good experience placings, because they've survived more or less to the end of the game, and they generally get an opportunity to farm quite a bit of damage as tanks come in on the cap circle in isolation. Now, in this particular case, the tanks aren't arriving at the rear in isolation because they didn't have a fight on the way up. These tanks drove straight up the western side, and the first contact they made is practically around our own cap circle. So you're not going to get the advantage that you would get sometimes. You'll see players that hang back around the base and they'll farm damage in the late game. Now, not every player who hangs back around the base is capable of farming damage in the late game. Quite a lot of them do terribly and are genuinely terrible players. But quite a significant minority of them are actually, well, they mightn't be good players. I don't know if they're good players. I think if they were good players, they could be more aggressive. They're not capable, I think, of being good players, or at least they're not willing to do what it takes to learn how to be good players. But they can still farm significant amounts of damage and do quite well in the losing games. In particular, they won't do well usually in winning games, because in winning games it is the players that actually pushed forward that do the most damage, and you'll see this in this game if you look at the scores at the end. Our team didn't score that well. We didn't do a lot of damage, and the enemy team, compared to the enemy team did significantly more damage. The top 3 or 4 players in the enemy team did significantly more damage individually than the top 3 or 4 players in our team, and that's very frequently the case in winning and losing teams. If anybody does think of a way that I could have won this game, I'd be very certainly interested in hearing about it, or any suggestion of that nature. Then I could always try it again in the future, but I think, given that I pretty much decided, and I still don't see how a win could have been pulled out, at least not by my play. There are other possibilities, at least. Well, okay, possibly if I said at the very beginning, if I'd gone the other direction, it might have been a different game, simply because there'd been an extra tank over there, and maybe not. The other direction isn't necessarily an easy place to pull off any kind of a stroke either. We've now reached the end of the game, and I managed to sneak in that kill before I get finally annihilated. So we'll see the score, and I get 1700 damage. Don't get much than I have assisted, and I came second by experience. And I get more damage than anybody else on my team. The Tiger P and the Jagdpanther the top 3, and everybody else is considerably behind. The enemy team are like almost 500 to 1,000 points better. Again, significantly more damage in the top 3 or 4 players than in our team. But even in a losing team, you can still play to maximise your own effect and your own damage that you deal out by just trying to keep yourself alive and not trying to do something stupid like hold a flank that cannot be held. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like. If you haven't already done so, please consider giving the channel a subscription. Once again, I thank you for watching, and I will catch you all again soon.